All right. Move on, family. Welcome to our rapid response event. My name is Darrell Douglas. I work with Move On. I'm based here in Houston, Texas, and I'm super excited to be here with all of you today. Let's cut to the chase. We're all aware of the recent Supreme Court decision allowing Trump to remain on the Colorado ballot, despite his involvement in inciting an insurrection. It's a decision that has left so many of us frustrated, but fear not, because today we're going to dive deeper into what this decision really means and what we can do about it. We're not here to dwell on disappointment. Instead, we're here to empower ourselves. And through this live stream, we'll be unpacking the many parts of what we can do and what you can do about it. Are you with me? Put it in the chat. Okay, that's what we wanted to hear. Now you're all going to hear about our election program and what it's going to take for us to win. If you're ready to get involved, text READY to 66866. What does that look like? Well, you're going to hear much more about this later in the call, but if you've done election work before, you know exactly what that looks like. And it's going to take all of us. By the time you leave today, you'll have a better understanding of what the SCOTUS decision means for our country, its implications for our future, and most importantly, how you can be involved in the solution. So buckle up, folks, because we're in for an eye-opening and empowering discussion. Thank you for joining us, and let's get started with our very first speaker, Kelsey Herbert, one of Move On's campaign directors. On to you, Kelsey.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Kelsey Herbert, and I've been involved in Move On's campaign to disqualify Trump for about a year. We're gathered here tonight because we're enraged, we're disappointed by the Supreme Court's failure to uphold the Constitution and for letting Donald Trump off the hook for inciting the January 6th insurrection. But what I really think brings us all here together ultimately is that we believe in a multiracial democracy where everyone's vote counts and voters get to decide their leaders, not the other way around. And we want to work for a country where our rights at the ballot and beyond are protected and expanded. In the aftermath of the 2020 election, including in the weeks on and before January 6th, Donald Trump led an effort to deny the will of the people. That's us. The 2020 election had the highest voter turnout in a century. Yet despite knowing that he lost to Joe Biden, he went to great unprecedented lengths to overturn the election results, from pressuring secretaries of states to change the vote counts in their states, to hatching a fake elector scheme, to spreading the big lie that the election was rigged and stolen, which quickly swept the nation, and too many people still believe today. And finally, in a last-ditch attempt to remain in power, Trump summoned a group of white supremacists to the United States Capitol to disrupt the certification of Joe Biden as the next president in a deadly insurrection. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution prohibits anyone who ever held public office who engages in insurrection or rebellion against the United States government to ever run again. And all evidence points to Donald Trump inciting the January 6th insurrection. So it was right for voters across the country to file lawsuits in their states, including Colorado, to bar him from appearing on the ballot. And it was right for 500 plus Move On members to sign the petition for secretaries of states to disqualify him. The truth is that Trump disqualified himself for running for president by inciting the January 6th insurrection. That's why the Colorado Supreme Court stepped in and ruled on December 19th, 2023, that Trump is ineligible to be president under the 14th Amendment and should not be listed on the primary ballot, which happened to be today. Trump then appealed this decision, which is how it got to the U.S. Supreme Court. Yesterday, the Supreme Court ruled that Trump can stay on the ballot in Colorado and everywhere else, despite having incited the insurrection, that the 14th Amendment does not apply to him. And even worse, the conservative justices alluded that it should not apply to anyone ever again. The Supreme Court had a chance to hold Trump accountable for his disgraceful attack against us and our democracy, but instead they let him off the hook. Now the twice impeached, 4 times indicted criminal that is Donald Trump is clearly poised to be the Republican nominee. So that's why it's so important we came together tonight. It's clear that we cannot depend on the court for accountability. As voters and people who envision a multiracial democracy where every vote counts and every person matters, it's now up to us to defeat Trump at the ballot. We've been here before, and we can do it again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Kelsey. Now on to our very first speaker. Well, there he is. Our very first guest is a favorite of Move On. If you've been on calls over the past couple of years, you've seen him before. He's an author, a legal expert, frequent commentator on television, radio, and the pages of The Nation. Ellie Mistal. Ellie, you didn't seem so surprised by the court decision, right? But that doesn't dull the outrage. Can you tell us how this decision fits into sort of the bigger picture of the court and the impact of it's having on our democracy and our country as a whole?
Absolutely, Darrell. Thank you guys so much for having me. It's great to be here on Twitch without having to get my butt whooped by 13-year-olds on Helldivers 2. So very excited about that. Yeah, no, I wasn't surprised. And I wasn't surprised because I listened to oral arguments about this case on February 8th. And what I heard from oral arguments was 9 justices, not just the 6 conservatives, but 9 justices essentially terrified of Donald Trump and what his MAGA white supremacists will do if they are denied their droit de seigneur to rule over the country. The conservatives, kind of for obvious reasons. The liberals, when you really listen to Kagan, when you really listen to Justice Jackson, what they were concerned about was if Colorado could kick Trump off the ballot, then other states, red states, could kick other candidates like President Joe Biden off the ballot on what they were afraid would be trumped up insurrection clauses, so that you would have a different slate of presidential ballots in Colorado that would be different than Texas, that would be different than California, that would be different than Maine. That's a bad argument, right? Because as the lawyer who argued the case for the government for Colorado said, first of all, insurrection is kind of rare. Right? The white conservatives only do it like a couple of times a century, right? So the idea that we should be kind of bending the law to make sure that insurrectionists are taken care of just kind of doesn't hold water. Moreover, we shouldn't be making laws based on what bad faith Republicans are going to do with those laws, right? Like we shouldn't, like it's not good law if you're grounding it in like, what is Greg Abbott going to do? Like that's not a great way to start. And if you're going to make laws based on what bad faith Republicans are going to do, well, then maybe you should start with voting rights laws. Maybe you should start with gerrymandering laws. Maybe you should understand what bad faith Republicans are really about and make your Supreme Court rulings based on that, instead of only bringing out the what will Republicans do when it comes time to help Trump. So I disagreed with the liberals' point at oral argument, but I wasn't surprised that when the decision came out, they were for restoring Trump to the ballot. What I was surprised with, and here's I'm gonna have to get a little legal weedy because I'm sure many of you have heard that this decision was 9-0. And it kind of was on the specific point of whether or not Trump can be on the ballot in Colorado. But in terms of why Trump can be on the ballot in Colorado, that did not break down 9-0. That broke down 5-4. And it was 5-4 boys versus girls. It was the 5 male conservative justices against the 4 women justices, including Amy Coney Barrett, who disagreed with the majority opinion on that issue. And what that boiled down to was a disagreement. If Colorado cannot kick Trump off the ballot, who can? Because if Section 3 of the 14th Amendment is still allowed to exist, somebody's got to be able to get this fool off the ballot. And what the 4 women said was that surely a court could kick Trump or any insurrectionist off the ballot after a finding of insurrection or something similar, right? Like, obviously, somebody has the ability to enforce the 14th Amendment. The male conservative justices said, no, no, no. The only person who can kick Trump off the ballot is Congress. Congress has to, through an act of legislation, pass a law explaining that exactly who's an insurrectionist and exactly what ballots they should be kicked off of. This is a level of insanity that I struggle to explain. First of all, as one might imagine, a law has to be passed by Congress, approved by the Senate, and signed by the president. If the president is an insurrectionist, that kind of obviates the entire point of the amendment, right? Like at no point will a future President Donald Trump sign a law saying that insurrectionists can't be on the ballot, given his own, let's say, personal baggage, right? So the idea that this can only happen through Congress is a joke on its face. But to the extent that we need to follow and listen to the Supreme Court, all of that does, all that should do, is reinvigorate us to make sure that Democrats and people who don't like insurrection take control of Congress. Because the only way it's now going to happen that insurrectionists are barred from trying to rule the country again is if Congress acts and Congress passes a law. And where we are right now, with Republicans in control of Congress and the Speaker of their House being some guy who thinks he's like Moses's bagman, that's not gonna happen, right? So unless you take the frustration and the anger and the sadness over what the Supreme Court has done and reinvest that energy into making sure that these kinds of people cannot control Congress, then the Supreme Court has truly won.
Thank you so much, Ellie. Don't go too far. Our very next guest is Joanne Carducci, and she's known as JoJo from Jers. Those who know. And Joe has a political newsletter called Are You Effing Kidding Me? Which is like so on point because that's something I've sort of been repeating to myself over and over. Are you effing kidding me? So we're excited to have her on, and we're excited to have her and Ellie together. Now, interesting fact, a little while ago, I think this is y'all first time actually meeting, but a little while ago, you were both on a little show called Saturday Night Live, so it's kind of a little reunion.
It's crazy, right? Totally surreal.
So, Joe, when the decision came out, your response sort of captured the kind of passion and inclusive insight that you're known for. Can you share, beyond the legalese and the constitutional questions, why everyday voters should care about the decision, and what does it really mean for all of us?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here. Listening to Ellie sort of just make these really complex issues so manageable and bite-sized is really one of those things that is crucially important, because that's how we get, through these things is without all the noise and everything. We have bite-sized pieces of information that we can digest, and then we can break them down and talk about them. But I think number one, my takeaway is that I'm mad, I'm frustrated, right? So I'm not a constitutional scholar. I'm a mom in the suburbs, but I have really strong feelings about all of this because the implications for my kids who are 10 and 14 are massive. And I think you don't have to be a parent, really. You just have to be a human being to be concerned about what we stand to lose should Donald Trump be able to ascend to the White House again.
Absolutely. We're going to bring actually Joe and Ellie together, if that's cool. So let's see. You might think you've seen them together on Saturday Night Live. We've got sort of, I guess you could call this an exclusive of sorts. So
just don't yell at us. That
I promise I won't yell at you. And this is a question for both of you, right? So, Ellie, what you sort of explained and what we know is that what this decision has affirmed is that the Supreme Court is not stopping Trump. We are. And while we hope the courts do hold him accountable, it's up to all of us to defeat him at the ballot. So when you think about what's at stake in this election, or what a Trump presidency part 2 could look like, what motivates the two of you most? We'll start with Ellie.
Yeah, so I would love to say that it's simply a case that the Supreme Court is not helping us stop Trump, but I think it's marginally worse than that. The Supreme Court is proactively helping Trump, right? And we don't see that just from the Colorado ballot access case. We also see it in its delayed decision to hear Trump's immunity appeal, which, to be clear, is one of the dumbest legal arguments you could ever hear in your life, right? The idea that the president is immune from all criminal prosecutions, regardless of what crimes he commits in office, up to and including the assassination of political rivals, that's not law, right? That ain't even a Lord of the Rings, right? That ain't even fantasy. That is just straight up gangster stuff that has no business in a legal argument. The fact that the Supreme Court decided not to hear that case until April 22nd, which will be 130 days after special counsel Jack Smith first asked them to hear the case, probably won't decide until late June, pushing back any trial against him, most likely until after the election. Understand, the Supreme Court is trying to help this man win. They're trying to help this man win, not only because they agree with his political positions, like they might not like his social media feed, but they agree with his political positions, and some of them want to retire, right? Clarence Thomas doesn't want to die in that job. He's got vacations to take, all right? He's got boats to be on. He doesn't want to die there. The only way that he gets off of that court and to enjoy his fabulously wealthy retirement is if a Republican is placed in office and he can retire under a Republican. So remember, these people have a vested interest in making sure that Trump is president. So to answer your question, what motivates me to vote in this election or do activism, it's the only way to stop these people, because it's not just about stopping the Trump regime and the MAGA regime. It's also about stopping these 6 conservative justices who have basically crowned themselves kings and queens of our polity, even though the fact is that nobody elected them. And as long as Republicans remain in power, these people will be untouchable. So we have to use what little Democratic voting power the Supreme Court still allows us to have, which is not much. We have to use what little power we still have left to stop these people.
Go.
Yeah, I just want to, at least before, which I always think is so interesting, is that the courts put this back to Congress. It was up to Congress. And we all remember watching the impeachment trial in the Senate and watching Mitch McConnell standing there and saying that he knew that Trump was responsible for the events of January 6th. And then what did he do? He kicked it to the courts. He said this was a decision for the courts, for us to turn around in the year of 2024 and see the courts say, no, this is a decision for Congress. It's maddening, because as a human being, as a mom, I came home from a job at a public school on January 6th, and my kids were at their sitter's house watching that unfold on TV. And they were young, and it was incredibly traumatizing. And we all had our own experiences in that moment. And watching it then, to think we would be here now, is mind-blowing. It fundamentally goes against everything that I believe as a human being, as I believe as a woman, as I believe as a mom. And so there's that huge component to it. And that also there's this idea that Trump should actually somehow be able to return to that office. I mean, if I was a bank teller and I organized a heist at my bank and they didn't get away with the heist at my bank, but everybody at the bank knew that I was responsible and I got fired, I wouldn't get to be working at that bank again. I wouldn't be working at any bank again. I'd probably be in prison by now, but not Donald Trump. And that's the other thing, too, is this accountability component to this. Again, I keep going back to being a mom. It's the biggest component of my life. And accountability as a mom is fundamental. You have to teach your kids that. We have to make, groom them. That's right. That's what I said. Into being adults who can be accountable for their actions. And Donald Trump just seems to consistently get away with it. And the Supreme Court, the MAGA majority in the Supreme Court, isn't just putting a finger on the scale. They've taken a January 6th bus paid for by Ginny Thomas and parked it on the scale. And it's infuriating. And it feels like we don't have a superhero. We need a superhero to come, but we don't have one. No one's going to come and be like, well, the Supreme Court is actually not above the law, but we're actually going to enforce that. We have to be the superhero. No one's coming to save us. We have to vote in numbers like we've never seen. And if you're not motivated, if you think Joe Biden's not perfect, blah, 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 the alternative means reproductive freedom is gone. Gun control is gone. Voting rights are gone. He's saying he'll be a dictator on day one who's going to deport more people than have ever been deported in the history of time. Believe him. So all of these things are on the line. And it's not hyperbole to say that our democracy itself is on the line. Donald Trump doesn't say things like, I'm going to be a dictator on day one in a joking or tongue-in-cheek fashion. He doesn't deliver on his promises, but on his threats he does, or at least he tries. And this is one he definitely means. And as the great Nancy Pelosi said, we don't agonize, we organize. And that is what we have to do in this moment. We can't get mired down in like, oh no, woe is me, this is impossible. We, the people, have to use our voices and stand up and make the change we see.
They will absolutely pass. And I try to make this point as much as I can because there's a lot of mud in the waters, and a lot of times as they're running for office, Republicans try to pretend as if they have some kind of reasonableness or decency. Make no mistake, they will absolutely pass a national abortion ban if they take back both houses of Congress and the presidency, and the Supreme Court will approve it. Like, understand, the Supreme Court, which just said that the states can make their own decision about a woman's right to choose, which is ridiculous that a constitutional right is now up to like what, Joe Bob and Jimbo in Florida feel like, but whatever. Having just said that the states have the right to that the states have the right to choose, not women and pregnant people having the right to choose. Make no mistake, when Republicans flip it and pass a national law banning abortions, this same Supreme Court will approve it. And if you don't believe me, I have 3 letters for you. ACA. Remember that when they tried to pass a national health care bill, the Supreme Court rejected the rights of the federal government to make healthcare policy. We don't remember the ACA as a loss because John Roberts converted a national health care bill into a tax. It wasn't a tax at any point, even though that was the argument that helped us. At no point was the Affordable Health Care Act a tax, but John Roberts converted it to a tax so he could uphold the law passed by 2 houses of Congress with a 60-vote majority and blah, 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 but still deny the government the fundamental power to regulate healthcare. So when the Republicans come around and use it, they will be using the same argument that they used against the ACA, and they will use that to suppress reproductive rights throughout the country. That is what's coming next. Should we lose this election, make no mistake about it.
And just to kind of, if I can, just to carry that forward as well, it's not that you were suggesting this at all, but it's not just abortion. It is. It's contraception as well. And watch what they're doing with IVF. Watch the response, excuse me, to the State of the Union. Watch Katie Britt and just watch what they're doing with IVF, because they're being very careful and thinking they're fooling all of us right now because they're not really addressing the idea or the notion that those frozen embryos are the same as my 10 and 14-year-old kids. They're not doing that. They're saying, oh no, we support IVF, but you signed the Birth or Life Begins at Conception Act, but you don't see how those jive. And they're like, no. We support IVF. So many people have benefited from IVF, but what they're setting up is that, well, maybe people that they'd like to have access to it will. Who knows what kind of weird dystopian future we'll have. But they're setting up a reality where IVF too is banned for most people. And so when they say that, they try and make this just an abortion issue or it's a state's issue. And right now, by the way, what they've put in place in just the 14 red states has resulted in 64,000 pregnancies as a result of rape. 64,000 pregnancies. And those other states, those blue states surrounding those red states, are inundated with so many cases that they can barely offer the services they provide. And that's just like a tiny little hint at what a federal ban would be. And they're all dancing around this issue because they know that it's the dog that caught the car, and they don't want us talking about the reality of what they're planning, but they're not that smart. So they're saying it out loud all the time. We just have to listen to what they're telling us. We are not going to accept tyranny of the minority in this country ever again.
Thank you so much, Joe. Thank you so much, Ellie. And this is the perfect segue into the next part of our conversation today. So you just heard it from JoJo from Jers that we are the majority, and you're going to get the opportunity now to be part of the mechanism that is going to work all the way through November to make sure that Donald Trump never steps foot in the White House again. If you look at the bottom of the screen, you'll see that you can text ready to 668-366. Again, that's 668-366. Go ahead, pull out your phones right now. If you're on your phone, you can like scroll over and open up your text box, and you're going to text ready to 668-366. I don't know about you, but I'm super fired up to make sure that we win in November. This is one of the greatest ways to make sure that we defeat Trump and other MAGA Republicans in November. Here at Move On, we have a saying that goes, there's a jersey for everyone on the field. It is a football reference. I don't know much about football, but the point is, there's a jersey for everyone, no matter which position that you're playing. And guess what? If you're in the stands, if you're a cheerleader, if you're in the band, if you're working concessions, there's literally a jersey for everyone. So as folks continue to go ahead and sign up, we'll go ahead and get into what our actual plan is going to look like as we get closer to November. We're talking about action today. If you're ready for action, go ahead and text ready to 668-366 and go ahead and become a Move On vote mobilizer. Okay. So I already know your question. What does a Move On vote mobilizer do? Well, it's totally up to you. There are many ways to plug in. We know that 2024 is shaping up to be a very important race. And in the past, we've done like a lot of other organizations done, and we've reached out to folks who voted the most, and we've gotten them to commit to vote. Well, this year, things are a little different. We're casting the net even wider. And if you'll open slide number 1, we're going to talk about our voter engagement strategy, which is already in the midst of starting. Some of you guys, some of you folks who saw the vote live stream last month sort of got a sneak peek of this, but we're going to go through it again, and we're going to show what it looks like to actually be part of the vote mobilizer team. So this year, we're adding a healthy dose of persuasion to our plan. In the past, not so much. This year, we were. If you were on the last vote mobilizer call, you know that we're building the skills necessary to win later this year. We just had the first part of a 2-part training based specifically on persuasion because it is so important this year. Part 2 of that call is coming up on March 18th at 8 p.m. Eastern. You'll see a link where you can sign up for that call. You do not want to miss it. If you're one of those folks who said, I want to be part of the action, I don't want to be on the couch, I want to make sure that we defeat Trump, you want to make sure that you sign up for that call on the 18th. We're reaching out again to surge voters. These are voters who need a little extra encouragement to come out to vote. And it's been proven that this little extra encouragement actually makes a huge difference when it comes to moving the ball down the field. Get it? I'm still using the football references. So there are multiple entry points to help people get on board. And we need you with your jersey on to make this possible. So you'll have the opportunity to choose whether you'll be trained to phone bank. I'm pretty sure there are a lot of folks on here that have phone banked before. We're going to have opportunities for folks to write postcards, host postcard parties, and you'll be able to get your family, friends, and neighbors to join in and really flex our muscle. So together, we'll participate in and host virtual and in-person phone banks. So you can see we'll go back to the first slide if that's possible. There's plenty of opportunity. So the first part of this, as we said, is persuasion. So vote mobilizers are going to engage surge voters. These are the voters that need a little extra attention with a series of personalized contacts. We've talked about some of them already. That first contact voters receive will be a postcard. The second might be a phone call, and the third might be an actual knock on the door, right? So there are multiple entry points, but this is the way that folks are going to be able to come in. If you go to the next slide, we're going to go from persuasion to GOTV. Those who have been in this for a while know that GOTV stands for getting out the vote. So after we've built and connected with folks for that first go round. Now it's time to connect with voters in person and over the phone and every other way that Move On does it to get them to triple their vote by reminding 3 friends. Raise your hands if you've been part of our vote tripling program. It was huge to win in 2020. It was huge to flip 2 seats in Georgia. It was huge to continue to take hold of the Senate moving forward. Together, we'll participate in and host virtual and in-person phone banks to invite surge voters in the most important congressional districts and priority states to in-person and virtual events based on progressive issues that are most important to us, like climate, abortion rights, and MAGA bans. This will build our list and flex our mobilization muscle. So starting in late September, some of you will get those knocks on the door and be part of our GOTV effort. So from phone calls to door-to-door canvassing, we're going to drive the ball down the field. Again, I use that reference, and we're going to get a touchdown, the touchdown we need in the House, the U.S. Senate, and the White House. Are you with us? I know the answer is yes. So again, at the bottom of your screen, let's go ahead and formalize that commitment to 2024 by texting READY to the number that you see below. I know I can feel it. Folks are going and they're signing up, and that is what we need to do. So we've heard from some really incredible speakers about the court and what's at stake in November. Move On and its millions of members are here to share what is motivating many of us, and our managing director of campaigns, Jara Burke, is going to tell us more.
Thank you, Darrell. It is great to be with you all tonight, channeling our anger into collective action. While we are certainly disappointed in the Supreme Court ruling, we are not surprised. We know that Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump spent years packing the Supreme Court just for days like yesterday. And while we must continue to try Donald Trump for his numerous crimes in courts, we must now also convict him in the court of public opinion and defeat him and the entire MAGA movement at the ballot box. And here's why I am optimistic today. Because we have done it before and we can do it again. We, all of us, beat Donald Trump and MAGA extremists in 2018, in 2020, and in 2022. And we will do it again this November. I'm also optimistic because so many of you are here tonight. It shows how energized, motivated, and let's be honest, pissed off and ready to fight we all are. Members like y'all are the heart and soul of this organization. You are why we are powerful, why we are effective, and why we have been able to enact so much progressive change over the last 25 years. You are our secret sauce. And boy, we are going to need that now more than ever. I don't have to tell you what's at stake this election. You know it better than anyone. And I don't need to tell you why it's so important that we go all in to ensure we re-elect President Biden and Vice President Harris, while we must keep the Senate and win back the House. Only through winning this November can we tackle the climate crisis, restore Roe, protect our communities, and create a fairer economy that works for us all. You all know, and everything, and I mean everything, is on the line. Democracy, our rights, everything. The stakes have never been higher. Donald Trump and MAGA extremists don't just want to undo all the progress we have made in the last 3 years. They want to undo all the progress we have made in the last 3 decades, which is why we are running one of the biggest electoral programs in our history to secure another Democratic trifecta and defeat MAGA's very real threats to our freedoms, rights, and futures, so we can continue down the road of progress for all of us. At the heart of that program is all of you. You are our secret sauce. You are how we have power. And tonight, I need all of you to join us and ensure we win in November. So please, sign up right now to join our election program as a vote mobilizer. Text READY to 668-366. Again, that is text READY to 668-366. We literally can't do it without you. But first, I want to say thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for all that you have done. And thank you for all you will do to ensure we win in November. Now, we'll hear from Move On members about the importance of this election.
I'm voting because I feel very committed to helping to build a healthy society that is fair and just and protects the vulnerable.
I cannot wait to vote again in 2024 for Biden. He was signed to everything like infrastructure, Chip and Science Act, giving federal aid to Ukraine.
I'm voting for democracy, voting rights, women's choice, women's right to their body, Social Security and Medicare.
Anytime someone comes out and tells you they want to be a dictator, that is a reason to protect democracy and vote for Joe Biden in 2024.
Let's not tax the rich, let's tax the middle class and poor, huh? That makes no sense.
Tax the rich. We're going to have the funds available to give health care to every United States citizen. That's why I'm going to vote Democrat.
Women in Texas must step up. Our rights have been taken away. We should not have to fight for what we had 50 years. I do not have to be dying to choose what medical procedures I want to have.
I'm voting because democracy is what's on the ballot. I'm voting so I can vote again in 4 years.
I will be voting for President Joe Biden in 2024 in order to protect our democracy and the rule of law.
We cannot allow Donald Trump to get in office. He's a racist, he's a traitor, he's a liar, and he's a criminal.
After feeling that loss in 2016 and surviving those 4 years, I knew I couldn't do it again. I got heavily involved volunteering with Move On and the Biden-Harris campaign, and then the Warnock-Ossoff campaign, and I found a new sense of hope, reborn in a way that I had never felt before, because we worked hard, we organized, and that work panned out, and we won, and it's time to do it again.
So we've just heard from so many Move On members and how they were involved. Now's your opportunity to get to do the same thing. Next, we're going to hear from Joel, who's going to tell us a little bit about the landscape and how we're going to win.
Thank you so much, Terrell. Incredible to be in space with you all. My name is Joel Bravo. I'm calling in from the sunny, but also very shady state of Florida. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the 2024 landscape and the target races. You've heard from my colleagues and some incredible speakers about what's at stake and how we're going to be turning folks out. But I'm going to close this off here right before we end the call to talk a little bit about where we are doing this work, right? We've heard so much, and today's actually we're in the backdrop of some moving news as we are speaking here today of Super Tuesday. Both Democratic and Republican primaries are happening. So let's talk about the 2024 landscape. So as we know here, this map, you might have seen it before, or maybe this is the first time you're encountering it. This is the political consensus across the political ecosystem of understanding of where states currently stand today, whether we're talking about polling averages or just historical trends of voter turnout. These are the states that are highlighted blue are typically trending Democrat. States that are highlighted red are typically trending Republican. And the states that do not have a color are the states that are considered toss-ups. So we're talking about Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. These are the states where the presidential, House, and Senate majorities will be decided on. As we take a look into the House and the Senate picture, the Republicans currently hold a very slim majority, right? We just replaced very successfully George Santos, right, with a Democratic representative, Tom Suozzi. And so now Democrats hold 214 seats in the U.S. House to Republicans 219, which means if we can flip just 5 seats this November, we can take back the House. In the U.S. Senate, there's a little bit more of a complicated picture, right? There are two U.S. senators that separate Democrats and Republicans majority in the U.S. Senate. And we have some really challenging races upcoming here in November, but we will do our fight to protect the U.S. Senate majority. So let's talk about these target races. So you've heard me talk about the map and what the political consensus is across the country. These 6 states that I mentioned hold 77 electoral votes. These are considered toss-up states where we don't know if a Democrat or Republican will win. And today, unfortunately, is Donald Trump's coronation of being the Republican nominee. And so he will line up to be facing off President Joe Biden in the general election. And so these 77 electoral votes, depending on who they go to, will determine the outcome of the election. In order to win the presidential election, and therefore the Senate and the House, we must win a majority of these states to win the White House. So that means we must win 4 out of 6 states within these 6 states in order to take back the White House and win. On the House picture, MoveOn in 2023 launched a framework to take back the U.S. House, known as the Complicit Caucus. These are 18 Republicans who either won re-election or won for the first time in 2022, but President Biden won these districts in 2020. Our main priority is to unseat and replace the Complicit Caucus. These are 18 seats, as I mentioned. We won in 2020, but then lost in 2022. In addition to the 18 congressional districts within the Complicit Caucus, there are 6 flip targets, meaning that we're looking to flip an additional 6 seats and also play defense on 5 democratically held seats like Alaska's at-large congressional district held by Mary Peltola. Our ability to hold the line on those 5 very close Democratic seats from 2022, flip 6 seats, in addition to the seats that we're looking to flip within the Complicit Caucus, will mean that we will be able to take back the Democratic House. And one very last important fact about our House targets is that they're geographically dispersed, right? They're within 20 different states within the continental U.S., and we're excited to court you, MoveOn members and folks who are engaging in our elections to throw down for not only the presidential, but also our House and now our Senate plan. So the Senate defense plan is a little bit more difficult. As I mentioned, we have seats that are up for election in Ohio, Montana, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Nevada. These are states that are going to be, these are elections that are going to be heavily contested, but we feel really confident in our ability to hold the line on the Senate. Aside from protecting incumbents in swing states in Ohio, Montana, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Nevada, we will elect new Democrats in Arizona and Michigan. You may have heard, as of yesterday, or as of today, I think, Kyrsten Sinema is no longer seeking re-election for her Arizona Senate seat, and we're going to elect an actual Democrat to this seat. Hallelujah, right? In Michigan, Debbie Stabenow is stepping down, and we will replace her with an incredible Democrat as well. Aside from our protection and our elections of new Democrats in swing states, we are going to be electing mission-aligned champions in open seat primaries. So today, March 5th, is the California Democratic primary. So we will see the results of who advances to the November general election. There may be an opportunity to have 2 Democrats on the ballot, which we're really hoping for. If not, we will be guns blazing supporting the Democratic nominee tonight in California. And in New Jersey, there's some turmoil there, and so we're looking to elect mission-aligned champions in a seat there as well. So this beautiful map, as you see, spells out MoveOn's electoral target strategy. In this purple color, you can see our U.S. House targets. In this MoveOn blue color, you can see our presidential and U.S. Senate targets. In this teal, you can see Georgia highlighted there very boldly and beautifully as a presidential only target. And in the blue, in Ohio and Montana, you will see our U.S. Senate targets. So we'll be throughout the country speaking to voters and making sure that we're doing our part to not only win the White House, but also flip the U.S. House and defend the Senate. So we're going to do this work in these incredible congressional districts, but who are we going to be talking to? Who are we going to be turning out? So Move On is focused very strategically on surge voters. Like we did in 2022, we noticed that surge voters are voters that tend to favor Democrats at the ballot. They're a critical target for demographic. They're a critical target and demographic for success in battleground states. And these are voters that did not vote in 2016, but have at least voted once between 2018 and 2022. These are voters that voted either in 2018, 2020, or 2022, just one of those last re-elections. And these are typically folks that are of the millennial and Gen Z, hello, I'm a Gen Zer, who are aging into the electorate or are returning voters. So these are folks who are, plugging into the electoral process and are voting scarcely, but we have the ability to speak to those folks. This is just a more clear picture of who our surge voters are. What's critical to note is that these surge voters, they are parallel or in line with the target universes that we've outlined for the races that we want to flip or hold. And they're registered to vote in the 2024 either target state or congressional district. So this map, last map that I'll share with you here tonight, is our surge voter universe in the red, and in the blue, our Move On member density map. So as you see here, we'll have plenty of coverage in key congressional districts and key states that are important for the outcomes of the 2024 election. And with that being said, Darrell, I'll kick it back over to you to close us out.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Joel. As we wrap up this live stream, we've heard a lot today. We've heard about how the Supreme Court made a decision, but we're going to be the one to take the ball down the field and actually win. Again, if you're here to take action, you're going to text READY to 668-366. Again, that's 668-366. And don't forget that on March 18th, we'll host a persuasion training during our regular vote mobilizer call. And you're going to simply learn how to talk to friends and voters about the election for all mobilizers. So everyone, don't forget to sign up for the 18th. Don't forget to text. It's right at the bottom. You cannot miss it. 668-366. And with that, let's go get them.